Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, we're live on Music Row in Nashville. We're going to see some amazing recording history with an amazing historian here. Mike Porter's our guest on TWiRT.
This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support online at bgs.cc. By the Ruby Console from Lavo. See Lavo in your future at lavo.com/TWiRT. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. And by the CalRec Type R console system. Type R is a brand new, modular, expandable IP-based radio system from CalRec Audio.
Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech. It's our 435th episode. This is the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to the light bulb at the top of the tower. And in this case, maybe we talk about the record pressing plant, what happens when a recording gets done. We are broadcasting live today from a very famous location, and I've got an amazing gentleman here with us that knows a lot of the history of this place and a lot about music and recording technologies as well. I'll introduce him in just a minute. For now, I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. I work for the folks at the Telos Alliance, so if you hear me say something positive about them, hey, it's just because they're my employer. They send me a paycheck, and I really appreciate it. Also on the show today is our co-host, and that is Chris Tobin. Chris is live somewhere in New Jersey. Hey, Chris, welcome in.
Hello there. Thank you.
Hey, man, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm just reading up on my broadcast technology IEEE magazine. It's very important. It's a good organization to be part of. So catch up on a few things. WWFD is just an old digital AM, so it's good. I saw you at the Quonset studio. It's a good-looking Quonset.
You let the cat out of the bag.
Oh, come on
Yeah.
now. Most people don't even know that. I mentioned it to someone the other day. They're like, what? I was like, all right, never
What?
mind.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
You have to be
Yeah,
a Nashvilleian or in the music industry to know about that, right?
exactly. So it's okay.
Yeah.
Besides,
Yeah.
it's good lead-in because you guys got a lot of good stuff. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. And that special treat coming up later.
And I'm looking forward to you commenting too. We've got actually two parts to our show. First of all, we're going to be in the Quonset Hut studio and control room, and then we're going to head over to a different studio, Columbia Studio A. Did I get that right? Yeah. And so we're going to tour that, and then we got a special surprise at the end of the show. And it may not mean much to a lot of folks, but it's just such a great piece of history. So we're going to hear about all that. So Chris and audience, let me introduce our guest for today, and that is my friend Mike Porter. Hey, hi, Mike. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Kirk. Great to be here.
Tell me a bit about Mike Porter. How did we get to know each other? Through AES maybe, or what?
AES and some of your posts on Facebook about microphones too.
Oh, okay. So in the business of audio, what do you consider yourself an expert at? What's been your career there?
Most of it's been on the tech side. I came to Nashville to be a recording engineer, but I decided I didn't like recording McDonald's jingles for 12 hours a day. So I got over into the tech side and have maintained studios for my career.
I'm going to turn the camera just a bit because we're going to be over here close to these the stuff that you've got positioned just off screen here. Okay, so we've been promoting a little bit this idea of that we're in this Quonset Hut, and we're going to take a bit of a historic tour in a few minutes, but set the scene for us. Tell us where we are. First of all, we're in Nashville on a street, Music Row East.
We're Music Square East.
Music Square East.
Which was originally 16th Avenue South.
Okay.
Prior to that, it was Belmont Street, going way back.
And in fact, the street out here used to be somebody's driveway.
It was part of Adelicia Ackland's property that led up to the mansion which is actually on campus now.
Now, most of us would say, who?
Adelicia Ackland. She was quite the business lady and negotiated with the Union troops to get her cotton to market back during the Civil War.
Ah, okay. So she did have a plantation.
She did. That's actually what Belmont campus is.
Oh my goodness. Wow. And
bowling alleys and greenhouses, and they're still excavating and finding statues to this day.
Wow. Well, now eventually this piece of property came to have a house, a bona fide house, and tell us what happened from there.
Well, where we're standing is actually where Music Row started. Owen Bradley and his brother Harold. Owen was a band leader for WSM Radio back in the late 40s, early 50s.
WSM Radio 650
correct.
Had a band.
Correct. All big stations had a band.
Wow. Okay.
And he was the band leader for that. And before this place existed, they actually, people were recording at the Two-Lane Hotel in a place called Castle Recording, which was downtown. Yeah. And that was mostly staffed by freelancing radio engineers from WSM and other stations. So the original recording engineers were actually radio broadcast engineers.
Some people have called WSM the Air Castle of the South. Any relation to Castle Recording, or is that a coincidence?
I think it's a coincidence,
Okay.
but somebody can correct me on that if they want to.
All right. All right.
But when that came to an end, it eventually shut down. The Two-Lane Hotel no longer exists. And Owen and his brother Harold, who's a guitar player, were looking for a place to have a studio. So in around 1953 or so, they actually leased a space over at 2nd and Lindsley in what was a union hall, and paid the grand sum of $25 a month for that space. It had a stage on it, so they actually recorded there as a band would for the radio station. They fixed it up, and the landlord liked their improvement so much, the next year he raised their rent to $75 a month.
Oh,
so Owen wasn't too happy about that.
Triple the rent. Okay.
Exactly. So they moved down to a little space in Hillsborough Village called, which I knew when I moved here in 74, most people did, Acme School Supply. It was a little cinder block building down there. They had a studio in there for about a year. Wasn't conducive to recording because it was a very low ceiling. So they got to looking around town. This area over here on 16th and 17th had just been zoned mixed use, residential commercial. So they bought a duplex house here on the property, knocked out the first floor, and that became the first recording studio on what later became Music Row. So that's where that started. And also as a result of Owen being involved with WSM Radio, the sister affiliate is WSM Television.
Okay.
So he wanted to be in film and TV work. So they bought a World War II surplus Army Quonset Hut for $7,500. Actually built about a 4.5 foot high block foundation to set it on top of.
So the Quonset Hut that we know and you see in historical pictures is actually lifted.
It's lifted up about 4.5 feet.
Okay.
That gave them proper ceiling height in here.
Actually, if we could switch to the other camera, Suncast, we've got a view available here. If we can switch to it, if it's transmitting. Nope. There you go. That is the inside. Tell us what we're looking at.
Well, you're looking right now at the west end of the studio. We're actually behind where the camera is now. And you can still see the curved arch towards the back of the room there. This is obviously not what it looked like in 1955. It's been redone. The skylights were added later under Columbia Records, or actually the Sony days. But that's the space where a lot of famous recordings were done.
Wow, we'll get more of a tour of that in a few minutes. Hey, you know what? I almost forgot. We need to take a quick commercial timeout to hear from one of the people that makes this netcast possible. And so I hope you'll stay tuned and hear from our folks, our friends from Broadcaster General Store and Vox Pro.
Yo, what's up? Live from NAB 2018. Hey, it's Caden. You need to check out Wheatstone and Vox Pro 7.1. The upgrades are amazing. If you're a jock, if you're a talent, producer, whatever, morning show, everyone knows Vox Pro, everyone uses Vox Pro, everyone loves Vox Pro. But now the features for this year, 2018, on 7.1 are amazing. If you're using version 4.5.6 and you go to 7, this is exactly what you're missing right here. The features are a game changer. It's going to cut down your editing time by like 80% depending on what you use Vox Pro for. And with version 7.1, introducing unlimited Practic button bars right here, hotkeys right here. I'm going to show you coming out of a song.
Bad things. It's a lot of bad things that they wish and they wish and they wish and they wish.
So you're coming out of your song?
Yeah.
Start your next song right here. It's basically an entire production room right on Vox Pro. So it's the Vox Pro we know and love with a ton more features. And now this is the ultimate game changer right here. Effect macros. So instead of hitting your effects button bar and going up here using your mouse for every effect, you do it right here with one click of the mouse, and you're going to cut down your editing time by about 80% without even touching this new sexy black controller. Check it out right here, Wheatstone Vox Pro 7.1 at NAB in Vegas 2018.
Thanks a lot to Broadcaster General Store and Vox Pro. Oh, that mute button really works, doesn't it? Broadcaster General Store, you can check in with them online at bgs.cc or call them. And, you know, that's the best way to deal with Broadcaster General Store. They are so friendly, and I mean that. I've been dealing with them since my Sam Phillips days. Their phone number is 352-622-7700. It's 352-622-7700. I did engineering for Sam Phillips, and he would say, "Hey, Kirk, call them girls down there at BGS and get me something on order. Order me some microphones." Yes, Sam, I'll do that right away. So that's my Sam Phillips impression. We are live at the Quonset Hut recording studio in Nashville, Tennessee, on Music Row. I'm here with Mike Porter and hey, Chris Tobin. I know you're just sitting back listening. We're going to take a tour in a few minutes, but we got some microphones to show here in just a few minutes after we finish hearing about the history. But Chris, you please feel welcome to jump in any time and loudly and ask a question if I'm not hitting all the right buttons for you. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So Mike, we kind of heard up to the beginning of recording here. Kind of take us through some of the rest of the years of recording history.
Well, the house in the basement of the house, the studio was actually in the basement of the house.
Okay.
And in the basement of the house, Gene Vincent did Bebop Alula.
Oh, really? Right down there.
Right down there.
Okay.
And Buddy Holly did some recording, but without the crickets. Owen did not want the crickets for some reason. And I'm told those recordings have recently resurfaced. So I'm working on trying to get some more history of that. Mm-hmm. And actually, Patsy's first album that she did after she signed with the label that Owen was producing for was done in the house. All of her other work was done here in the Quonset Hut.
Wow. So Patsy Cline's was, you said the first thing was in the house.
The first album she did was in the house. And on that was the song Walking After Midnight was on that one.
Now, was that you said it was recorded in the basement? There was a major modification done to the house early on.
Yeah, they knocked the first floor out to open it up to give them good ceiling height for a recording studio. Square footage was fairly small, but they had good ceiling height. And if you look at pictures of that on the internet, it's a very distinctive look. There's pegboard at the bottom and some pine paneling, and then you see a break higher up and then curtains. So that break was right there where the first floor had been.
Wow. So and part of that house, I guess, is still here in terms of its basement.
Well, just the physical space where the basement was poured was there because the house was torn down in 1962.
But the hole's still there.
The hole is still there, yeah.
Okay. So was that about the time the Quonset Hut was built then?
No, the Quonset Hut was built almost from day one. Owen, because of his affiliation with, we were talking about WSM radio and WSM television, Owen wanted to be in film and TV work. So they bought the Quonset Hut, built that, and that was actually a film and television production studio.
You were telling me they would do television productions on film cameras.
Exactly. Yep.
And even in early color days.
They did. There's a series of videos you can buy on the internet, on late night television, country stars back from the 50s and 60s. And the things that you see that were shot in color were probably shot out here because they were shooting color at that time.
Wow. Shot right out there in that room that we have a camera on right now.
Exactly.
Wow. That's amazing. So bring me up to current day. What happened between them and
well, current day in 62, Owen sold the property and the buildings to Columbia Records. They wanted a presence in Nashville. Mm-hmm. And their intent was to tear everything down. They also there was a 3-story apartment building next door. And they bought that. And they were going to bulldoze all of it. But Owen convinced them to leave the Quonset Hut alone. That's why we still have it today. Huh. A lot of people think it is gone because the front of the building says historic site of. But you just can't see it because everything's been built around it. But the physical metal structure is still here.
Wow.
A little surprise.
Wow. Now, later on in the show, we're going to walk over to a different studio. Just give us a little foreshadowing of that.
That would be Columbia Studio A, which when Columbia bought the property in 62, actually built that studio from the ground up, which is where the apartment was, which is the only case I know of when an apartment building got torn down to build a studio in Nashville instead of the other way around, as we've been fighting for years now. Right. And a lot of some very historic things happen in that space as well.
Okay, so we'll see Studio A shortly. We'll also, after we see a few interesting microphones here and hear a bit more history, we're going to take another break, and then we'll take a walking video tour of the Quonset Hut studio right outside here and Studio A and their control rooms. And there's a couple pieces of older gear hanging around. Yeah. There. Now, speaking of older gear, you've got a collection here, so I'm going to ask you to pick whatever you want to start with.
Well, we'll start here. We're asked quite often if we have any original equipment from the studio, and the basic answer is no, we don't. That was all sold off when Sony got out of the studio business in 1982. Mm-hmm. But through the Bradleys, they had also been at RCA a year. We were able to acquire the Bradley microphone collection, which is quite extensive, and there's some.
Let's hold that up close to the camera here.
Bring it RCA.
Yeah.
44, weighs a ton. Ribbon microphone. A matter of fact, because these were at RCA at one point, they're just scratched in with a nail here, RCA 04.
Oh my goodness.
So
So who probably sang into this microphone?
this could have been in front of Patsy. It could have been in front of Elvis.
Uh-huh.
You know, people say, well, this is a microphone like Elvis sang into, or Patsy said. These
At other places.
at
they
other
say that,
places.
yeah.
These are the microphones.
Oh my goodness. All right. Patsy or Elvis or both of them sang into that.
And, we have several RCA 77 flavors.
Oh yeah. Let's go ahead and hold
on
that
here.
up close.
There we go.
Yeah. There we go.
So
Tell us about that.
that's mostly famous. I used to see that on television all the time growing
Yeah.
up as a kid.
Yeah.
So there was a 77A, there was a DX. These are DXs, I believe, on that. So we have 5 of these guys.
Now these are so iconic that even today talk show hosts will have one of these on their desk and they're
Right.
still wearing a lapel mic.
Oh yeah,
Or there's an overhead shot.
or they bought them and gutted it and put something else inside.
well,
of it.
yeah,
But, great vocal mics, great for upright bass.
Now, have you ever been on the air yourself, radio or TV?
Way back in another lifetime for a little
Well,
while.
I started in public radio in this would have been the late 70s, like 77, 78.
Yeah.
And this was our
That's
microphone.
what they used.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep.
All right.
A couple of others here, Chris. I can show you another flavor of the 77, just a different model, different color on there for that one. These are all working, by the way.
Do you know if they would have used a matte finish like that on television?
Usually the ones that they may have. I'd have to go back and look at some
Mhm.
old shows.
Okay.
The shining was they was seeing that little glint of those old tube cameras.
Oh,
was
yeah.
pretty impressive.
Hey, if you just tuned in, you're watching This Week in Radio Tech. Kirk Harnack, Chris Tobin is standing by. He's watching, and we're live at the Quonset Hut studio in Nashville. It's Columbia Studio B, and we're with Mike Porter. So Mike's showing us some of the actual original microphone collection from the Bradley mic collection. So what we got here?
This is an Altec 639, also known as the birdcage microphone.
Oh, that's the birdcage.
That's the birdcage
Okay.
right there.
Oh my goodness.
Again, it's a ribbon. And I had one of my staff workers was going through some pictures one day, and he came across a picture of Buddy Holly in the house in front of one of these.
Uh-huh.
And he came up to me with this in his hand in the picture, and he said, "Is this the one?" I said, "Well, I can't guarantee it, but it probably is."
Hey, do you think we could plug this mic cord into that and use it for a minute?
We can give it a try.
Okay, we're going to give it a try.
Is there phantom power on that?
No.
Okay.
No phantom power. All right.
Actually,
What's that?
no, we're good. Sorry.
Those of you watching This Week in Radio Tech, episode 435, Kirk is with our guest at the Columbia Studio at Quonset Hut Studios in Nashville, playing with a ribbon microphone known as the birdcage.
We have to put our hand behind it like Elvis did.
Go ahead. Put your
So,
hand behind the
there we
top.
go. No, all the proper engineers would say, take your hand off the back of it. You're affecting the sound.
So we've got a good level. Chris, how is it sounding on your end?
It's sounding kind of thin, but then again, the ribbon mics you always had to play with and tweak a bit, but it sounds good considering its age and what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, everything in the collection still works.
Wow. All right, I'm going to disconnect
Nice.
that.
All right, there you go. So these are microphones from the Bradley mic collection.
Yeah, we may have been talking through, and I'll turn this back down now so we get our level back.
The Buddy Holly
This is-
microphone.
Yeah. This is completely different. What's this?
This is an Altec. It's one of my favorites, and that's actually a tube microphone.
What? There's a tube in there?
There's a tube in here, yeah. And it looks like the capsule is not complete. It looks like it's missing something. But it's a condenser microphone, Omni. One of my favorite microphones for overhead drums and piano.
Oh, yeah.
Although I have seen a picture of Ella Fitzgerald in an ad singing into it on stage.
Wow. From the side. 'Cause it's an
Well,
Omni.
you're right across the top
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would what kind of power supply would that require?
There's a big external supply box,
Mhm.
10-pound box down here in the
Okay.
case for that.
Wow.
So that's part of the collection. We have Elam 251s in the collection, the ubiquitous U47s, 48s, 67s, things like that.
Now, are there still things that get recorded here, or have there been in the last decade or two of significance because they wanted to record here?
We do, since this is part of Belmont University now, and these are actually classrooms at this point.
Oh, okay.
If the right set, we're not commercial, we're not here to compete with our neighbors
Mhm.
at all, but we will, if the right set of circumstances come along and somebody says, I want to record where Patsy recorded, or I want to record where Dylan recorded, we'll allow that here for 1 or 2 songs, provided they'll let us use students on the production
Yeah.
of it. So not anything I'm going to say is significant. We did have last year, Michael Martin Murphy came back in. He had originally recorded Geronimo's Cadillac up in A. He re-recorded it 50 years later with some students working on the project.
Wow.
So that was a lot of fun.
Well, and now I feel extra super double triple honored that we're doing This Week in Radio Tech here.
Good.
That's awesome. So we're talking to Mike Porter, and Mike, your title I saw was the facilities manager.
Correct.
Do you also teach anything?
I teach one class, which I teach studio maintenance.
Uh-huh.
That's what my background was. So I teach that on Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons, and we cover everything from fader maintenance to how to wire 120 volt power supplies to basic troubleshooting to drill press, how to cut in three thread mic stands, stuff that most people don't know about.
And today you would just go to the store, order from Amazon or Guitar Center, but back then
you had to fix them. Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
we still do that.
I noticed that at, and we haven't done a show from there yet, but at the WSM transmitter site, they and I guess things recorded here have gone over that transmitter many
Sure they have.
times.
Oh yeah.
But they have a full shop in the basement of that. Yeah, they could build transmitters.
Yep. That's, when I went back in the day when I was working for major studios here, we had a shop. We did a lot of our own construction. There was no place to go and order something from per se.
Now, tell me about the room that we're in now. It's a control room, and we'll take a little closer tour of this. Actually, we can probably do that before we go to the mobile cam. So why don't we talk about this particular room? Obviously, this isn't the console that was here in the...
Not the original. No, back in the day, the console that was in here, there were 2 twin consoles being built for Decca Records. Those were being built by a company called AudioFax out of Long Island. And Owen was able to purchase one of those. And in 1959, they paid the grand sum of $35,000 for this tube 3-channel console. Wow. And both of those consoles still exist. One's at the Country Music Hall of Fame and one's at the Musicians Hall of Fame.
Oh, they're both here in Nashville?
They're both here in Nashville still.
Okay.
Yep. Not in working condition, but they are available to go look at.
So this is a teaching laboratory then, right?
Correct.
Let's, I'm going to turn our backs to the camera and see if I can point the camera down just a tad. And tell us about this console and how you use it to teach.
This is our audio engineering technology students. This is in their sophomore year where they first get their hands on professional equipment. This particular console is Neve, built out of England. And this was originally a 72 input console, so it was at least twice as wide as it is now. We found it in pieces in one of Gary Bell's warehouse. Gary owns House of Blues and Kiva Studios. And we were able to purchase it in the pieces. And over 3 semesters, our advanced electronics students built this one out of the parts. So it's in here working every day. We're on spring break right now, so it's a little calm around here. But this one takes a beating, and it's we do teach full analog processes in Audio 1. No digital, other than we do use Pro Tools as our recording media because it's fast and it's cheap. We just recently sold our 2 24-track analog studers because it was just the right time to get rid of those.
Yeah, and there's probably not. I mean, there's a few specialty studios that still have that kind of gear, but the techniques are the same.
The same.
Yeah.
Right. We just don't mix in the box down here.
When you're teaching students about recording, tell me a little bit about that process. First, of recording the tracks. I guess you call that tracking, right? And then later on the mixing. Let's start with the tracking. How do you? I mean, we'll take a tour of the studio out here in a few minutes. But what's the process in here for that?
Well, the process in here it's just routing. It's a way to get all those multiple microphones down to. Back in the day, it would have been 1 track of a tape machine, and there were no overdubbing back then. As we were talking earlier, it was all cut live from the floor with strings, trumpets, brass, guitar, bass, drums, vocal. There was no do-over.
Back then, the mix was controlled by where you put people and microphones and how you had them play.
They were very carefully set up. There was a specific setup for this room. And again, since we're talking about radio, those first engineers were radio broadcast engineers that started this industry.
Let's turn back around and face the audience. So you still had the concept of getting the mix right, but it wasn't done with a mixing console, was it?
Well, there were faders. Some had knobs, some had faders. It would have been similar to a radio console.
Okay.
Of the day.
Oh, so they would have several
Yeah, they would be not. They had multiple inputs. But They only had three channels to go out to a 1, 2, or 3 track tape machine.
I see.
So very little overdubbing done back in the.
So if they had as many as 3 tracks, woo, that was a big deal. How would they divide the tracks in terms of the material?
Well, if they had 3 tracks, there probably would have been doing a stereo mix, possibly then with the vocal on a 3rd track. So if they were going to go do television, they could pull the vocal out of it. Otherwise, they'd have done a separate mix without it. They go back and just record it again without the vocal.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Hey folks, you're watching or listening to This Week in Radio Tech. And if you're a listener on this episode, you really might want to go to the web, go to YouTube, go to thisweekinradiotech.com or gfqnetwork.com and look at the video. We've shown you some microphones, and we're about to show you a tour of the Quonset Hut and of Columbia Studio A. So hang on for that. Our show, This Week in Radio Tech, is brought to you in part by our friends at CalRec and also Angry Audio. We'll be right back.
CalRec's Type R is a modular, expandable IP-based radio system featuring 3 slimline panels, a fader panel, a large soft panel, and a small soft panel easily configured to give the operator full control. Layouts are saved and recalled quickly between shows. A single 2RU core with integrated I/O gets customers up and running fast, and that single core can power up to 3 independent mixing environments with no sharing of DSP resources. Available in 4 DSP packs, and as your station grows, larger packs can be added, enabling it to grow with you. Power to the surface is supplied via standard PoE switches, keeping cabling to a minimum. Type R is fully AES67 compatible, as defined by SMPTE 2110, which means that it is also compliant with NMOS discovery and connection management specs. All these features combined make Type R the most flexible radio console you can buy. Find out more at calrec.com/TWiRT.
Thanks a lot to CalRec at calrec.com. Do add the /TWiRT there to let them know that you came here because you saw it here. Hey, studio guests are only human, and humans, they cough, they sniff, and they clear their throats, even on the air. You can cure this with the Angry Audio Guest Gizmo. Press the cough button, mute the mic. Every guest needs one. You know what else guests need? Well, they need headphones, which is why each Guest Gizmo also has a studio quality headphone amp built in with individual volume control. Anything else? Well, you've seen those mic arms with the built-in LED tallies. They're beautiful, but how do you light them up? Well, the Guest Gizmo does that too, illuminating the red light whenever the mic is hot. And installing the Guest Gizmo in your studio furniture couldn't be easier. All you need is a 2 3/4-inch hole saw and a steady hand. No router required. Your studio gets a clean, custom appearance, and you get all the credit. Check out the Guest Gizmo and all the other cool gadgets at angryaudio.com. That's angryaudio.com. Really appreciate CalRec and Angry Audio for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, we're about to go on the walking tour around here. So, hey, Chris Tobin, why don't you give us your thoughts for a moment while we switch to the other camera, okay?
Absolutely. You know what's great about something like this with the studios with Mike is that you look back in the past and you say to yourself, wow, 3 outputs on a console would say 6 inputs or maybe 12 inputs. And you say to yourself, wait, but this is a musical band. They're putting together a group and they're 3 tracks out. That's it. And to think of the ingenuity and the way it was done. I know a friend of mine who's an archivist, and he's played me some recordings from the 30s, and they were stereo recordings. And you hear the way they mic the audience and the band, and you just say to yourself, wow, and you could hear everything. And that's the console. It just felt like you're in the room. So it was amazing. So, look at that and fast forward to today and what we can do and the capabilities in the case of what Mike said with, they're using Pro Tools to capture the audio. It's just fascinating what was being done with so little. And then today you have so much more you can choose and decide to be even more creative. So it's pretty cool. The opportunities to have to go to places like this is something that's a rarity. So if you're in a location, say maybe you're in London, maybe you're Abbey Road, maybe you're in LA or Capitol Records, that kind of thing, or Chicago, or anywhere else in the world where something goes on, that you can go and look at a place that say is a historical location. Check it out. Do it. Definitely do. I mean, there was a time here in New York City, for the longest time, the New York Times paper used to own a classical radio station, and one of their studio facilities at Times Square had some legendary recordings done there, and it was just fascinating to look at what they did and how they did it. So here's the same now with Belmont and what we see here with the studios at the Quonset facility. And I guess there's a new picture coming up. there we go.
Check out that picture. And Mike Porter is going to tell us about that console. Mike, what can you tell us?
That was the console that Owen was able to purchase that was built by AudioFax. There was a twin console, of which Decca had one, and he was able to have one here. In 1959, $35,000, which converted to today's currency is $348,000 plus.
For that?
For that.
Oh, my goodness.
Tube console. And on that very console, there was a pleasant accident that happened in this room. Whereby the fuzz tone came out of that process in here. And they were doing a Marty Robbins session, cutting a song called Don't Worry. You can go back and pick that up on YouTube and listen to it. And very prolific guitar player back in the day. That was great, Mr. Grady Martin. And Grady was playing electric tic-tac, and the way they used to feed direct, they just put alligator clips on the back of the speaker and jammed that with the console, which is like sticking your tongue in a socket. And it actually blew up. There's a backstory on why it failed, but it did blow up the tube preamp, but didn't break it completely. And the engineer, who was Jimmy Lockhart, on the session, was complaining, "I've got to change the module, leave it." Well, Grady recognized that there was something of value there, so he said, "Leave this alone. I'm going to play with it." So if you go back and listen to "Don't Worry," you'll hear the first use of fuzz tone on a recording in that. And from that, Grady later did another solo album, and on it is a song called "The Fuzz," where they use that broken module. So it's an odd mashup of fuzz tone guitar and an orchestra background. That was a hit, as was Marty Robbins' song. So they figured, we can use this as a marketing tool. So if you want fuzz on your recording, you book Bradley B. They brought out a real plug-in, plugged it in the console, and that's how that started. Later on, that module eventually failed, and Glenn Snoddy, who was the manager and chief engineer, and I later worked for Glenn at Woodland, told Owen, said, "Hey, it finally broke." Well, Owen said, "We'll do something about it." So Glenn went in the shop and out of transistors put together an emulator foot pedal, and that became later, he took that to Gibson, and that became the Maestro FZ1, which is most famously known as the opening to The Stones Can't Get No Satisfaction.
Oh, my goodness. Oh,
So
what that came out of a failure here.
Failure in here.
Well, we'll look at them quickly. There's a Hammond organ over here.
Yeah, it's an A100, which
Okay.
is most people know a B3, but it's just a different cabinet.
And it's Leslie speaker.
The Leslie accompanying that, we have one of those in each room.
A good upright piano there.
Yep,
And then, of course, for teaching class.
absolutely. The ubiquitous whiteboard.
Let's see. Let's look up. We saw this shot earlier, but this is the inside ceiling of the Quonset Hut.
Right. And originally up there where you see those 4 panels, there was actually the film and TV production control room looked out over this area.
Really?
So it was actually a staircase that came down out of that upper floor right there.
And these acoustic dividers?
Yep, those are used for separating instruments and vocals. As a matter of fact, this is a really famous spot right here.
Okay. Stand there.
And Lou Bradley, who was an engineer here for 14 years, was over visiting one day after this had been turned into the graphics department for Sony Records, was talking to a young lady who had a cubicle over here. And he noticed she had Patsy Cline posters up. And he said, "Oh, you like Patsy Cline?" She said, "I'm a fanatic." He said, "Come here." And he had her stand right here. He said, "Stand there." And she stood there. And he said, "That's the spot." She said, "What spot is that?" He said, "That's where Patsy did all those recordings." She had no idea she was working 10 feet from the place.
Now, fill me in real quickly on this panel on the wall over here. I think I know what it is, but how did this kind of technology come to be? Is this this isn't a Nashville first, is it?
Oh, no. That's just the standard way of getting microphones into the control room. The 3-pan XLR.
Yep.
Now, back in the day, though, this place was built with the older big P3 connectors, the Canon.
Yeah, we saw some of those upstairs. Yeah.
Right. So that was the standard back in the day for studios, because we used those at Woodland as well.
Now, this studio seems pretty live to me. Tell me about that.
It's just the big floor. When this was the original Quonset Hut, what you see up here was kind of an experiment. There was like a 1x6 lattice work that went up from about where the black line is up to the roof, and then they had thrown a big old thick movie theater curtain in it to control reflections, because a half cylinder is not great for recording studios. But Harold Bradley, who just passed away a couple months ago, had been in here and done sessions, and he said it sounds like the original room did. So we got it pretty good.
Huh. Wow. Can we make our way out and look at that reel-to-reel machine? Is there anything else you want to tell us about this room?
Just lots of stuff. The early Roger Miller stuff, all the stuff, Dang Me Can't Roller Skate in the Buffalo.
Right here?
In this room
Oh, my goodness.
as well.
Oh, my goodness.
Here. Brenda Lee. Matter of fact, Brenda Lee's "Rocking Around the Christmas."
Was done here?
Done here. Burl Ives.
The most popular Christmas song ever,
Yep.
"Rocking Around the Christmas Tree."
Burl Ives, "Holly Jolly Christmas."
Was done here?
Was done here.
Oh my goodness, this hair is standing up the back of my head
He
now.
was good. Burl and Owen were good friends,
Okay,
which is how that came about.
okay.
Early Statler Brothers stuff was done in this room.
Early Statler Brothers too. Wow. All right, now here, this is amazing. Not a whole lot of controls on this guy.
No, the basic functions: play, rewind, record, and stop.
And one glorious track.
One glorious track, full track recording. This was an Ampex Model 300, which Bing Crosby was actually part instrumental in getting this to market. And all back in this is probably vintage 1953.
Mike, tell us where we are now.
We've now moved into Columbia Studio A, which this was built from the ground up in 1962 after Columbia acquired the property from the Bradleys. And this is actually where that 3-story apartment building was. So this studio right here was built to Columbia specifications. So since they had studios in skyscrapers in New York and next to freeways in LA, this floor is floating on springs to isolate it from the outside world, which is one of those things in theory sounds pretty good, but the engineers didn't like it because it had a resonance. At the
Really?
bottom. Sucked one frequency really disappeared from in here.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
But of particular interest, Nashville's history changed forever in this room when some fellow by the name of Bob Dylan came to town
Yeah.
and did Nashville Skyline and Blonde on Blonde. Parts of John Wesley Harding, and that's also when Johnny Cash met Dylan, which later led to the Dylan Cash sessions.
Now, earlier you mentioned Chet Atkins is playing into some of the history here.
Well, we were talking about the Nashville
The Nashville sound. What is that?
Well, it's kind of the techniques that Owen started by using non-standard instruments on country recordings like strings and brass. And then Chet, of course, did that as well. So
Did that kind of music happen in the Quonset Hut or here?
yeah, it happened in the Quonset Hut. This was in '62, so there was a lot of history in here. And, George and Tammy recorded in here as well as in the Quonset Hut.
What are some famous recordings we might recognize from
You know,
here?
that's one of my I know more about.
Oh, but Quonset Hut, yeah.
But Snake Reynolds, Ron Reynolds is an engineer who's still around. Ron did a lot of work up here with Billy Sherrill, the producer. We actually there was a third studio down the hall back in the day, and actually Marie Osmond's Paper Roses was mixed in that room.
Really?
So there's a lot of weird ties to this room. Simon and Garfunkel did some recording in here. I'm still in a debate about exactly which one it was.
It'd be worthwhile to mention a bit about the neighborhood that we're in right now, because there's so much music business around here. CSAC is across the street, and all my radio station friends know they write a check every month to CSAC. What are some of the other companies up and down the street here?
Well, within tossing baseball, we've got all three PROs, performance rights organizations: CSAC, BMI, and ASCAP.
And I've been to the BMI building. We have our Emmy Award nominations parties there for the local television people, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we, one of our tenants in this building is the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. And every year we hold their, not the induction, but the announcement of the new inductees as a press conference in this room. So we still allow people to come in and use this that are industry related and charged. One, to keep the history alive, and let us just share the space in here.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm certainly grateful to the Curb Foundation for having purchased it to save it.
So that name Curb, tell me about that.
It's Mr. Mike Curb. He's been in the music business forever. Matter of fact, I think Curb Records is the longest running sole ownership record label in the country.
I know when I was a disc jockey, I played a lot of records that were on Curb.
So,
Yeah.
he was an artist in his own right as well.
Oh.
All their corporate offices are right here in the area. Matter of fact, several buildings on this block have Curb on them.
Hey there.
Hang on a second.
He's all right. He can do some work.
Come on in.
Come on, yes, he's fine. It's an informal show. It's all right.
So he has, as a benefactor, has helped save a lot of buildings around here, and we're grateful that particularly the Quonset Hut is still here due to his generosity.
Ah, okay.
And because of his long-standing relationship with Belmont, that's what led to this building becoming part of Belmont.
Tell me a bit about the design we see, the acoustic design of this building.
Well, this was
This
to
room.
rebuild after it was turned over to Belmont. So obviously, again, not the way it originally looked when it was new in '62, But even then, it was an open space. They did not have dividers in here. You kind of lock yourself in if you start building structures in it.
Right.
But we do have, non-parallel walls in places in hard and soft spots just to break up the sound, which is all part of what we need to do and for good recording.
Now, during a recording session, might I find a vocalist behind this window?
You might find a vocalist back there.
Okay. They probably move
So
it out
those
here
are all
somewhere.
portable. We set these up in different formats. We also, as you just saw moving in, our live sound students use this for a practicum room in the afternoon. It's just a big enough space for them to set up speakers and sound systems.
Oh,
Here. So live sound is also part of our curriculum.
so they'll mixing live sound?
Yes.
Wow. One thing I've noticed since living in Nashville for the past 18 or so years is whether it's an outdoor venue or a small theater, a big theater, of course, the Ryman, the Grand Ole Opry House, and a lot of houses of worship, is the sound mix is really good at a lot of places around here.
They better be.
Exactly.
So we have the sound reinforcement program here is a really rapidly growing program because there's a lot of jobs in that industry. And as we've seen the last few years, that's where revenue is being generated for an artist.
Yeah. Can we take a look in that
We can do that.
that studio? So you're watching to This Week in Radio Tech. It's episode 435. We are at right now at Columbia Studio A in Nashville, Tennessee. It's now part of Belmont University, and Mike Porter is our guest, and he's really our host today. He's really giving us a tour, and he's going to tell us about this console and some of the gear in here. And hey, radio engineers, perk your ears up. We're going to hear about some cool stuff here. So, Mike, what are we looking at?
This is an API console, which is a U.S.-based operation. They're still around. We can still buy these modules. Most people might know the Lunchbox series that you can buy the various EQs for and mic pre's. This particular console was built in 1972. It's a beast. It will keep working through anything that you throw at it. And when this was new in 1972, it was purchased by Wally Hyder Recording Services out of San Francisco and spent the first part of its life on a truck. And this particular console did the West Coast tour of Frampton Comes Alive.
What?
Done a couple of Stones concerts, and it wasn't for a house. This was actually for the live album.
Okay.
And when Wally got rid of it, matter of fact, there's a label down there on the LA2 that still has a Wally Hyder tag on it.
So here's a Tektronix LA2, and Hyder Audio Services right there on it, Unit 1. Oh my goodness. And that works?
It works.
Oh my goodness.
Everything,
wow.
Everything in this place works.
Wow.
So he sold it to Chris Stone at the record plant, who again put it on a truck. He had it for a number of years, and it went to Omega Productions out of Dallas, and there with Paul Christensen. And Paul knows a lot of the history of what happened on this console. And then he sold it to an employee, and then we found it about 12 years ago. It was in the back of a shag-carpeted remote truck in the middle of a barnyard in Texas.
Oh, no. Oh, wow. But so you're saying that this console has been on the road a lot.
Spent most of its life. Matter of fact, it was always on the road until we purchased it, and we originally installed it at RCA Studio B.
Okay.
When that was part of Belmont for teaching. And then when that contract came to an end, that's when we rebuilt this room about 6 years ago and brought it over here.
So this is the monitor. In broadcast, we're not necessarily used to a monitor section this big.
Right.
Why do you have these many knobs in monitoring?
Well, consoles are built in either two flavors, either a split console, as this one is with a monitor section on one side, or inline, which we saw downstairs, which monitor adjustments are within the input module. This is just, in my way of thinking, and I've always done it, you do your mix that's going to tape or to the DAW, and then what the musicians hear and what you hear out of the speakers will be separate mixed over here. So you can adjust this without affecting recording going down.
Okay. Okay. Wow. How do you talk to your students about which monitor speakers to use? I see you've got at least 3 sets here.
There's 3 sets in this room, and it depends on what they're doing. The little Genelec, all of them are great. The Genelec's are particularly good. Of course, the ubiquitous NS10s are in here as a reference, and then the JB. We happen to have JBLs up in here. It was part of a package that we purchased when we built this room. So they get, back in the day, if you walked into a control room, it would have been extremely loud, but we teach health sciences now. So those never get cranked way up. And so again, if we're talking about radio, if they're doing a mix, particularly it might be just for broadcast or streaming, you might mix it on a smaller speaker for compatibility.
Wow. My goodness.
Big speakers are for the audience.
Oh, and you have a couple other items that are, I know broadcast engineers are familiar with the UREI 1176 peak limiters.
Yep. Those, the old DBX 160s.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, this Keypax, I don't know if you know this, Valley People, that was a Nashville company.
Yes, it was. Yeah, sure enough. And they made some mic, some 1RU mic pre's, didn't they?
With that,
processing.
the Gain Brain,
Yes,
Keypax, lots of different stuff. So those guys are still around too. But yes, it does power up. Still passes signal.
Wow. Now, is there anything about this room in particular that lends itself acoustically for teaching and,
Well, it is a fairly large size room and fairly deep because our classes for this are limited to 15 students, so we've got to have a space. It's a little tight downstairs in the Quonset Hut.
yeah, I guess it would be.
But it works well. And one of the things that we're particularly proud of is that back when I was in school in 74, as somebody rudely reminded me, he said, "Oh, you were last century, right?" And back then, we had a small space at Belmont. But nowadays, there were only 4 schools back in 74 that taught this. Now there's hundreds. But as far as I know, we're the only school that still has the historic tie-in that we have with the music industry for here. And that's something we try to instill into the students to understand where you are and what happened here.
So I want to tell Chris and our viewers that the rest of the show now will be without me on camera, but hey, that's okay. What we're going to do is we've seen this Studio A. And I should ask before I try to close out this section, because after our last break, we've got a cool surprise for you. So hang tight, keep watching through the break. We got a cool surprise. No tip of the week. So unless Chris has something he just got to get off his chest. Is there anything else, Mike? I know you teach classes here all the time, and other people teach classes here, so there's so much to say. Is there anything else that you'd like to point out about these spaces that we've seen in relation, especially to broadcasting and broadcast history?
Well, if we go just thinking back to the history of what started it with radio engineers that actually did the work here, and I go back and listen. I've been listening to a lot of Brenda Lee lately, and that the quality of those recordings that was done straight to tape without any overdubs, without any remix. It's just phenomenal what those guys knew how to do and how to place microphones. Now, the first thing you should do before we try to teach a student, before you go grab an EQ, get up and go move the microphone. And those guys knew that art. Of how to do that.
Yeah. I hear. Well, in television too, sometimes we see black and white shows that were lighted so well that the even though it's black and white, the color, the quality, the tones that you see in the black and white are
like
so
an
good.
Ansel Adams black and white photograph.
Yeah, bingo. Yeah, exactly. Wow. All right, Chris, have you got any questions right now for Mike before we go to break?
No. The questions, the answers have come through, and no, it's just spectacular watching and looking, and familiar with some of that gear. I've actually used it in my career, so I am quite familiar with how it works and the history behind it. So it's cool, very cool.
You've got a good perspective there because you have been involved in recording projects in the New York City area, and you mentioned that jazz venue that you're part of from time to time, right?
Yeah, we have a multi-track Sony digital console here that we do a lot of recordings. We do about half a dozen a month. We have quintets, sextets, duos, trios, everybody coming through, and we do have mic placement. We try different positions. We do not EQ and go crazy at first, and it's fun. And plus, we're shooting video at the same time, so it's a video, it's recording for radio, web. So yeah, a lot of great things happening nowadays.
All right, we're going to hear from our last sponsor, Lavo, and when we come back, we're going to scurry to a pretty cool location. So hang on, and we'll finish our show from most interesting perspective. You're watching or listening to This Week in Radio Tech, episode 435. It's Kirk Harnack and Chris Tobin, and I have the pleasure of being live here at right now in Columbia Studio A in Nashville, Tennessee, on Music Row. We'll be right back after this.
There has probably never been a better time in history to buy a new radio mixing console. Today's consoles are more sophisticated than ever, with more features and functions than you can shake a stick at. But have you noticed how complicated they are? There's a sea of knobs and switches and displays and buttons. Some of them look like you might need a pilot's license to do your show. Well, a board doesn't have to be complicated to be powerful. Just look at the new Ruby mixing surface from Lavo. The first thing you notice is how smooth and streamlined it is. Ruby has lots of cool tech, but what it doesn't have is that confusing ocean of buttons that clutter things up. Now, we all know that there are some console features the jock only uses once in a while. So why dedicate controls to them? Ruby fixes this problem by moving those once-in-a-blue-moon controls to a touch-sensitive, customizable GUI that happily shares screen space with your other studio software, helping you fight control room clutter. Thanks to this design innovation, talent that use Ruby produce smoother shows with less errors. Controls that are used the most fall naturally to hand, while functions that rarely need adjustment are easily controlled with just a couple of clicks in the context-sensitive GUI. And Ruby has cool features you won't find on other boards, like Auto Mix, an intelligent gain writing function that guarantees the perfect mix for multi-mic morning shows and call-in segments. Dual mode snapshots that instantly switch the motorized faders between on-air and production modes, and enough DSP and I/O options to make even your pro sound pals green with envy. And because quality is as important to Lavo as it is to you, every console is proudly built to fanatically precise standards at Lavo's own factory in Germany. If you're ready to declutter your control room, do yourself a favor. Check out the new Ruby and the other cool Lavo radio tech at www.lawo.com/TWiRT.
And thanks so much to Lavo for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Go to lavo.com/TWiRT. All right, we are in this cool place. We are live on top of the Quonset Hut. Mike, tell me about what we're looking at here.
Well, people have asked, does the Quonset Hut still exist? A lot of people think it has been torn down because, as I said before, the front of the building says historic site of, but no, it's still here. So what we're seeing here is the original top has been, of course, covered over, but it's still here. And see it on Google Earth.
Yeah.
The house was actually bolted, was originally in front of this. And that may be an original structure from the house. I'm not sure about it. It could have been the back wall of that.
Wow. And there's CSAC across the street.
Yeah, so we're looking right at Music Row.
And as you said, BMI and ASCAP are also down the street.
Right.
And there are a number of music publishing companies and other recording studios here.
All over. I mean, right out the back here, across the street is the Master Phonics building and mastering forever and ever. I'm in. Now Black River down there, which used to be Ronnie Millsap's studio. Before that, it was Roy Orbison's studio. And Soundstage is right out the back door as well.
What a treat. This has just been great. Hey, it's a little bit windy up here, so I don't know how well that the microphones are picking up the wind or not, but just so we can have a nice Kleenex to the show, Chris Tobin, I'm going to ask you to do the honors and kind of close the show out for us and ask folks to tune in next week if you don't mind. Would you do that for us, Chris?
Certainly not a problem. Thank you. Well, This Week in Radio Tech episode 435 comes to you from the Quonset Hut studios in Nashville, Tennessee, with Kirk Harnack, our host, and our guest, Mike Porter, the facilities manager at the Belmont University facility now. And they teach audio engineering and all the various technologies regarding recording and things of that sort. So once again, as always, we'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Be sure to tune in next week for This Week in Radio Tech, because you never know what we may bring you and where we'll do it from. So this week was a Quonset Hut, maybe next week the space station. Who knows? But you'll find out if you tune in. And you can always check online anytime at gfqnetwork.com or thisweekinradiotech.com. So thank you very much, everyone. And for the rest of us here at This Week in Radio Tech, Suncast, our producer, Andrew, our founder and the man who runs the network itself, have a good day, and we'll see you on the next episode of This Week in Radio Tech.